That's DB. I'm Ravi Lula. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and we're joined now by Tim Verghese from inside Nebraska. Tim, what's going on, man?
Hey, not too much. How about y'all?
TV, what is up, man? Did you have to reconnect your message board and your what do you call the people that like post?
Subscribers?
Your subscribers. Did you have to recalibrate this week or how was it?
Yeah, a little bit. I think the biggest thing is just trying to kind of maintain the idea that the further we get from it, the more I truly feel like the result score wise, like in terms of what you see on like 56-7 is an outlier. The performance is concerning, no doubt. But I think more people are looking at that score and they get concerned by that. And they've kind of some of them have given up on the season. And it's like, hey, Nebraska's goals are still very much ahead of them. Like this season isn't a wash just because of what happened last Saturday. And so I think trying to just get people in the mindset of like, okay, there are very real concerns with this team, but the goals of this team are very much still on the table. And, the trajectory of the program can still remain intact if they finish out the year the way they should.
Tim, so I want to get to what you think those very real concerns are. But before we do that, I want to stay on kind of the tone of your guys' like message board and site here for a second, because, a lot of times DB and I talk about the interactions we have with fans, whether it's on our YouTube comments or on Twitter or whatever. And what we hear a lot is like, hey, like I don't really see that. I'm not really hearing that. I'm not sure what you guys are talking about. So I'm curious what the overall tone was of your message board this past week. Obviously, it was pretty negative in our mentions, but I'm just curious what it was like for you guys.
It was the same. I think just generally like for some it's immediately like and I think a lot of people when a result like that happens, they want to pin it all on 1-2 people and be like, okay, well, fire this guy, and be done with it, I think context gets lost with results like this, context of what happens across the course of a season, context of, hey, Nebraska didn't play a great game at all. Like there was not a single facet where Nebraska played a great game in, but there's still things from that game that you can look back and be like, okay, well, Nebraska can hang their hat on this. Nebraska can hang their hat on that. And I just think in general, I think the context get lost. And yeah, it felt like a message board from like the late Frost era, which I was a little stunned by because like, listen, I understand the results are shocking, but I mean, this program's still headed in the right direction. I mean, Nebraska got a commit the next day, and people were like, "Oh, what? Like, what's this guy seeing?" Like, there's still a very real.
It's incredible.
Yeah, and it's like I get it, but like at the same time, and like I had something on Twitter like in the first quarter that basically I'd said, "Hey, don't overreact to." I would encourage the fan base not to overreact to results because the team isn't. And I said that in the first quarter when Nebraska was down 14-7 because they were responding at that time. That tweet was up, obviously, and then things got out of hand and people were still responding like, oh, what now? What now? And some were taking it as in like I was saying that at the end of the game. So I deleted the tweet, but even after the fact,
you did not delete the tweet.
I did. But
so you know what's funny about stuff like that?
That happens to me all the time, by the way, Tim.
So I was just getting ready to tell the story, right? So like 5 weeks ago, the big deal was, or whenever they played Purdue, it was, hey, they went to the Oklahoma drill, right? And everybody had pictures. And so Saturday they were doing it again. And I said, it's not, I said, it's just a thing. It's not the thing, meaning no big deal, right? Like it's just a thing, not the thing. That's pretty self-explanatory, right? That thing popped up in my mentions, Tim, for 24 hours. It's a gimmick. Why do you do it? I'm like, can you guys not read? Like, are we just that upset that you want to dunk on it because we're like,
because we're just mad?
Because clearly, all I'm telling you is no big deal.
Same thing happened. So
I wasn't going to delete the tweet, Tim, because if I delete it, it's like. I'm like Forrest Gump, man. It's like, you blah, blah. I'm like, incorrigible, just incorrigible.
I had almost the exact same thing happen. I think it was first half against Rutgers. I said something about Satterfield being in his bag because he was calling a really good first half.
Yeah, I know. Heck, to heck with fluidity.
And then second half happens. Rutgers, they don't score against Rutgers, and they're like, "Oh, so Satterfield's in his bag, right?" And I'm like,
just miserable.
It was for like 2 days after that, Tim. So I don't blame you for deleting the tweet. I've thought about it.
You better not.
Yeah.
I didn't, but I've thought about it.
I just think it's like, and I don't want to get on this, like, because people misconstrue it as lecturing the fan base, but it's like, I've been other places. I've seen this in other places. It's weird for this fan base to demand that the program and the players within the program don't freak out when things go their way, when they freak out when things don't go the program's way.
That was my big takeaway. I'm like, instead of telling players not to read message boards and get on social media, how about you just not say it? Like, why does it always have to be somebody else's problem?
Yeah, it's like, why do you get to be out of pocket when then it's somebody else's problem for understand or seeing that you're out of pocket?
Right. And it's like, and I've seen fans being like talking, like in the response to players or in message boards and stuff, being like, I've been a fan for so many years. I've seen this time and time again. It's like, at what point do we keep giving and giving? It's like, how much do you think the players are giving? Like on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis? Like, how much busier is their schedule, and how much of a physical toll are they taking? They care about it just as much, if not more, than the fan base does. Like,
and they're all in on their coach too, TV. Like, so
right.
I feel they're all in, as they should be. Like, I'm telling, like, I don't know. They're all in on him. So that's all that matters. It doesn't.
Yeah, and my big thing too, I think, is coming out of that weekend and going into a week like this of Ohio State, where it's like, okay, you're not expected to win. You just want to see fight, because like the people are going up in this, like, here it comes again, because under the Frost era, you have a loss like that, and then things continue to just stack up on top of each other. Like the locker room starts to collapse, the culture starts to collapse. From everything we've gathered this week, locker room's still very much intact. The culture is very much player-led, and it's very much bought in. That hasn't changed. Will this weekend change anything to that? I don't know. I want to see Nebraska go out there and fight, and that's all I'm expecting. Is I want to see at least this program come back and battle back, because, you're facing a game where you're going to be severely overmatched in a lot of different departments.
Whoa, severely? No, I'm just kidding.
But all you got to do is fight. Like, that's all I want to see. I want to see this program fight.
We're talking with Tim Verghese from Inside Nebraska. Tim, as you kind of look at this game, and I know, man, I've been kind of getting on people this week a little bit, because
shocker.
I get, yeah, you know me, I'm always very calm, but I understand Nebraska's in all likelihood going to lose this game, right? I understand that. What I don't understand is this, like, impending sense of doom that there's not even an opportunity that Nebraska could even show well, much less win a game, right? Like, I went through a list with DB. How many games have we seen this year against teams that we thought were really, really good that lose to teams that we think are really, really bad? And we're just like, oh, that's just college football. But when it happens to Nebraska, it is not a possibility. There's no way. Ohio State's going to be mad and Nebraska's going to be depressed. It's like, Ohio State's coming off a loss too. Like, Ohio State's season goals are more in jeopardy than Nebraska's at this point, if we're being honest. Like, I just don't understand the disconnect, and maybe it's just emotions, and that's fine. But I just don't understand the disconnect between what we see every week in college football and then what we appear to believe is true with Nebraska.
Yeah, we just saw Kennesaw beat Liberty. Like, that's unreal. Like,
yeah, I don't think people appreciate how nuts. I've been talking about that for 2 days.
TV, you weren't here yet, though. But how about that year with Frost in Columbus, and it was all of a sudden the game, and we're like, how? Like, these guys aren't very good.
Yeah.
Remember they played Ohio State, too?
Yeah, and it's in year one. like they start off 0-6, right? And then they play. Like, we thought there was a better chance for them to beat Ohio State after starting 0-6 than we think they are with the 5-2.
It's just a weird sport to.
Like, weird stuff happens all the time.
Yeah, and again, like, I do still believe Nebraska loses, but, like, okay, what if there's a world?
Like, I do too.
But what if there's a world like yeah, I mean, like entertaining this, like and truly, like, I mean, because I've looked at this path as well. Like Ryan Day teams typically have started slow and sluggish out of the bye week. That's like been a thing since he's been there. Dylan's going to take this game personally because he was committed there. This fan base is familiar with him. He wants to make a bit of a statement. What if there's a world where those two things come together? Nebraska does get off to that hot start, and I'll say this: I've said this before, and this doesn't take away from, like, whatever happens on Saturday doesn't take away from that. I believe that Ryan Day is soft in big games. I believe that Ryan Day is not a great in-game coordinator, in-game manager when the going gets tough. Typically, he's got a talent advantage in every single game he's in. The ones he doesn't, that's where it starts to pop up against the Michigans, against the Oregons of the world. He's going to have a talent advantage on Saturday. But if the going gets tough and it's like, okay, it's a one-score game, I kind of trust Matt Rule's in-game decision-making more than I trust Ryan Day's in-game decision-making.
I mean, you can make the argument, Tim, that it's not even when Ohio State was still more talented than Michigan the last few years, right? Like, if you're going by recruiting rankings and an NFL draft and everything like that, you can make the argument that even when the talent gets close, that Ryan Day starts to struggle.
Yeah, that it's when they start to feel adversity, and it's why, like, I believe, like, the only thing stopping them from winning a national championship this year is the coaching staff. And it's not just like Ryan Day, it's kind of what they're doing off the field in the strength and conditioning department, in these other different departments. I just don't believe in the back end. They've invested a lot of money in that roster, but on the back end, I don't have a whole lot of faith in that coaching staff having the right mentality and having these guys, or their guys, like, wired the right way in these big moments. I just haven't seen it yet. We've seen more talent. Like, we've seen Ohio State teams that are similar level talent. Like, this is arguably the most talented roster in the sport right now, in college football. But again, there's been games where they've underperformed already this year. They've already had a loss. Like, that's going to keep happening because it's Ryan Day. It's who he is.
And even though it's the opponent this week, I just think there's something not right about, like, he wins all the time. And then just listening to the media in this week in Columbus, I'm like, God, and we think we have it bad, right? Like, we're not winning, and people pile on. He's winning, and people pile on. It's just, I don't know. It's like bizarro world. I'd love to have like 8 conference losses and have people and have people be mad, right? It's just I don't. Winning is really, really hard, and the balance of power is amazing. I mean, Vandy beats Bama. Georgia blows Texas's doors off, and Texas is like a 3-score fave over Vandy. Like, college, it's hard. It is.
The margins are as close as they've ever been, I think. Like, I think just between NIL, between the transfer portal, between all of that, like, all of these rosters have improved. That the depth at the top end isn't as good as it used to be. And at the bottom end, they've got these high-end performers now that can match up with anybody. And, like, Nebraska has one of those right now. Dylan Raiola is one of those guys.
Yeah, and Tim, that it kind of goes to something Coach Rule said earlier in the week, right? Like, he thinks he's got a bunch of guys on his roster that are going to play in the NFL, right? Obviously, Ohio State has a bunch of guys on their roster that are going to play in the NFL. I get the recruiting rankings are different, and I get even when they're picked in the NFL is going to be different. But at the end of the day, like, 1 through 53 on an NFL roster is not that much different, right? And so if both of those things are true, that kind of is going to my point of, like, it feels like we're marching to an execution, or that's how everybody feels, and I just don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, again, if you want something to feel good about going into this weekend too, it's like, I mean, typically out of the, like, you go back to last year, post Michigan, and you go to this year, post Illinois, like, the defense comes out with their hair on fire the week after, like, a loss that Tony White feels is embarrassing, and I think the defense is going to come out on Saturday and play with a little chip on their shoulder. And it's like, okay, why didn't they do it last week? Yeah, I mean, I understand that, like, nothing went right for Nebraska last week. Teams have those games. Like, that is part of it too. Like, I don't think Nebraska showed up in any department. They just came out flat. That's happened. That happens to the best teams, Some are just good enough where they can escape with a win. Nebraska just happened to go up against a machine. And again, another part of this too, like I understand freaking out about the loss, but like if we look back on this year and Nebraska's like 4 losses are to Illinois, Indiana, Ohio State, and pick one to playoff teams.
Yeah.
3 of those losses would have come to the top 5 teams in the Big Ten. You take that.
TV, if Nebraska wants to get right, in your opinion, which position group do you want to see play well first heading into Columbus?
I think the receivers. I think just need to see more from them, because I think a lot of the issues with them right now is an effort and a mentality issue, not a execution, not a perform. Like I don't think replacing the personnel changes anything, but I want to see that unit kind of take this game personally, show some more effort in perimeter blocking, work to get open. Give like fight, and I want to see effort from them. And I would say on the defensive side of the ball, I mean, it goes the same way, but I think they're overmatched a little bit just because of the type of guys they've got across for them. But same thing from the DBs. Just want to see some competitiveness out of them, some fight. It's a big opportunity for Tommy Hill and Sierre. I just want to see them compete against some of the better receivers in the country.
Tim, as you brought up kind of that mentality and effort issue, whether it's the receivers or other position groups, which I agree is the issue, not so much a talent issue in most of those places. At what point, if you're not seeing the effort and mentality that you need, do you have to make those personnel changes?
I think this week. I think if you can't get up after last week and you can't put in the effort, because you've seen now time and time again how lack of effort in perimeter blocking is affecting this team, or lack of effort in trying to beat press is beating this team. If you can't see that, and if you can't go 100%, I think Nebraska will have to make some personnel changes there too, and I think you could start to see that midway through the second quarter this week, if the guys out there aren't giving their all.
Well, okay, so TV, when we talk effort, I almost never talk about effort because it's always hard for me to decide, and maybe this is the coach in me, whether we've equipped a player with enough information in such a way where he's allowed to play freely versus I don't know if this guy's trying very hard. So I'm always very, very reluctant to talk about effort. But where do you feel like, if that's your opinion, that's showing up the most for you?
Just a lack of effort?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's perimeter blocking. Like that's the biggest thing, because perimeter blocking for me, it's just one of those things that I've seen it improve over the course of multiple weeks at other programs. I've seen it improve with the same personnel out there, because it, like, perimeter blocking, in my opinion, is a coaching thing. It's one of those things that you're like, some people are naturally good at it, some people need some work on it, but ultimately perimeter blocking, when you have the bodies that Nebraska does out there, it comes down to effort, and it comes down to coaching, and it comes down to, okay, do you know where your hands are supposed to be time and time again? Do you know where you're supposed to be blocking your guy? Do you know you're supposed to be blocking a guy or supposed to be baiting him with a route? Like, it's those type of things where, I mean, it's been a key coaching point, a quote unquote, it's been a key coaching point for them since fall camp. I remember talking to Ja'Cory Barney and Jalen Lloyd about it back in fall camp. Like, it shouldn't still be an issue for them 7 weeks into the year. Like, that comes down to coaching, in my opinion.
Yeah, Lloyd's one of those guys. I'm very, very curious to see tomorrow, because he's been kind of edgy all week. I think he's on the verge of the heels of Indiana, and he knows that if it's going to be boiled down to effort, like, I think he wants it on his, like, he's just one guy that I know for sure is embracing what the narrative is. I hope it's everybody else too, because that part I can't speak to, but I definitely think they hear what's being said, because they're hearing it from their own coaches in the meetings. I mean, it's very few positions other than special teams as a whole where Coach Rule has said perimeter blocking has been an issue all year. Like the minute he said that, it's like, wait, is he talking about me? You know what I mean? TV, like that will be something because your head coach did say that, and I think he's just keeping it 100, as the kids like to say.
Yeah, and I mean for these guys too, like that's what your hope is, and you hope they're fired up. Like, yeah, Lloyd's one of those guys that every time we talk to him, it's a guy with some fire to him, and he's quiet, he's very quiet, but you can tell there's a determination and a fight there, and and to their credit, I think Lloyd and Barney specifically, they try. They're smaller guys, but they try when they pass block, and you see the effort they give. It's not necessarily consistent, but you see the effort that they give, and you're not really seeing it from some other guys in that room right now, which is a little frustrating.
Tim, we've got about a minute left here with you. I know you mentioned him earlier in the interview, but talk to me about Juju Marks and how that commitment kind of came into place, because I don't know that a lot of people that are just fans necessarily saw that coming.
Yeah, it kind of came as a bit of a surprise for some people, but Nebraska had been engaged in dialogue there since Jamar Mosley got over here. He was recruiting Juju over at UCF. As soon as he got to Nebraska, kind of made him a priority, and even though he was committed to Kansas, they kind of worked to flip him and kind of sold him on just the opportunities off the field at Nebraska, just how better they will market you at Nebraska compared to Kansas. Some NIL opportunities, but also the development. I think for them, they were just able to show, listen, you're a versatile kid with a basketball background who started your career on the defensive line, is now working on the offensive line, and you think your ceiling's highest at offensive tackle. Let's get you in the program. Let's work with you on this. We've worked with these versatile body types before, and we know exactly, kind of how to get the most out of your frame and out of your athleticism. And so I think that really sold Nebraska there, and it helped, having Isaiah Mosey committed, having Jamar Mosley on staff. I think those familiar relationships he has already in Kansas City, being able to maintain those in Nebraska, ultimately I saw Nebraska win this recruitment out. And again, I know people get a little bogged down in he's a flip from Kansas, but this is a kid that had Oregon offers and Georgia and Alabama. Dan Lanning's coming down to visit him as recently as like the spring, like Penn State's coming down to visit him in the spring. Like, this was a guy, until he made it known that he wanted to stay closer to home, had national options. But as soon as he said he wanted to stay closer to home, it came down to Missouri and Kansas and Nebraska.
Tim, we appreciate it as always, and we will talk to you next week.
Thanks, Tim.
Next week.
More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next.